Hey guys, Levelcap and Luetin here with an episode of On the Level. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the Battlefield 4 reveal experience and the perceptions that were brought away from that by the people who went there versus the people who just saw the trailer online. Now there seems to be a little bit of mixed opinions, and I gotta say, Luetin, you seem to have a better experience with this than I did. So why don't you fill us in on what your thoughts are?
Well, one of the biggest things that I really noticed was that when a lot of the YouTubers who came back and posted commentaries and discussions about the game, for the most part were fairly positive, and a lot of people on my channel commented about this, especially with videos that I made as well. And there was a lot of people, you will have seen it yourselves, people saying, oh, DICE or EA have put words into your mouth, you've been paid to say this, blah, blah, blah. And one guy said to me, how come you are being very positive about the game completely, you almost have nothing bad to say about it whatsoever, but people who didn't go, YouTubers who didn't go to these events, were being much more critical about the gameplay. And this really brings us to what Level was just saying about the experience of actually going there. Now, the thing that people didn't get, the guys who didn't get to go, what they didn't get from the experience was being able to talk to people who work for DICE, who work for EA, and really sort of getting to see what they feel about the game. And that, for me, definitely, from the people that I got to speak to at the event, was a really big deal. When you could speak to these guys who were designers, developers, artists, coders, whatever, okay, their passion and excitement for the game, it came over so strongly that I think it really was something that we all took away from it. So then when we actually came to look at the game ourselves and sort of really think about it, that was such, it was still with us when we actually came back and started doing videos. So we had kind of carried their own excitement back. So I think the YouTubers who made videos and talked about the game, what you got was it wasn't just their feeling, it was the feeling of the people from DICE, and that's why I think the feeling from people who went was much more positive than the people who didn't go, and they had a much more kind of, without wanting to be harsh, a little bit more generic sort of opinion, do you know what I mean? So
Yeah, and we talked about it a bit too. So Luton went to the one in, sorry, where was your event located in
it
Europe?
was in Stockholm in Sweden.
Okay, so you're in Stockholm, Sweden, and I was in San Francisco, California. And so we kind of had a little bit different experience because most of, if not pretty much all the devs were in the Stockholm one.
Yeah.
We had the president and vice president of DICE there, but they were a little bit unreachable at points. And also, I wasn't sure how much information they would have on what I wanted to know about the game, like the little nitty gritty details. Now, they could have known a lot, but in the end, I didn't end up really talking with them much. I talked with some of the marketing guys related on EA and DICE's end. And so I think we had a little bit different experience in terms of understanding that passion from the devs, getting that across. But I still had an overall positive experience just from the video. I tried to be as objective as possible. And I think a lot of people were ultimately upset that the game looks a lot like Battlefield 3. And people are sort of, and they're doing a good job of saying, Frostbite 3.0 and all this stuff. Yet side by side images of the two games, it's very minute differences. And honestly, I was expecting that. I wasn't expecting some sort of revolutionary new engine so much. I was expecting sort of an upgrade to the current engine. And I think a lot of parallels are being drawn between the Call of Duty development, perhaps, and how people are a little bit tired of the reiterations of the exact same weapon models and very little change to the engine. And so perhaps there's a fear that they're going to go down the same production pipeline as some of the other shooters have gone. And personally, I just want to see more work done to the current engine. So whether or not we call it an official Frostbite 3.0, I was still kind of excited about seeing another title that embodies everything that I love about Battlefield 3, including the engine, but with more polish. And so that's honestly where my positivity came from in my videos for it.
I mean, that's the thing, is a lot of people all the way through Battlefield 3 have been saying, oh, it's not finished, why have you given us a game that's not finished, blah, blah, blah. And there's been all these kind of comments running constantly throughout. And now they kind of do bring a product which is basically it's a kind of step forward, but it's not the kind of jump we saw between Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 3, but it is a progression forward. And then everybody's going, oh, it's just the same, blah blah blah, and it's like, well, you can't have it all one way. What do you want? Do you want a finished product, like you say, which is going to be really sort of honed and they've taken from the experience they had with the previous game? Or do you want them to make something completely different and have all the problems yet again that they had with Battlefield 3?
Yeah.
It seems that people can't. They want to have their cake and eat it, and it's just a ridiculous, it's a typically silly thing for people to come out with.
Yeah, and there's an interesting thing that I just thought of, is that if you look at the other titles of Battlefield, the differences between certain titles like Battlefield Vietnam wasn't a huge leap forward engine-wise or graphically compared to the titles around it. Battlefield 2142 wasn't exactly a huge leap graphically. A lot of those engines around that time were very similar, but what DICE brought was really interesting new environments and gameplay to the factor, and that really changed up the games. And I still remember each of those titles very strongly in their own right. They still had their own unique gameplay. And so just because Battlefield 4 doesn't look like visually it's going to be that different, sure, maybe some of the weapon models are recycled, the animations are recycled, and that's not even for sure. Some of it could have just been for the trailer. But even if that stuff does get recycled, I mean, it's like, what's the problem? It's not like an M16 is going to look different in a new game. It's still going to be the exact same M16, right? If you modeled it perfectly the first time, why remodel it? So that kind of stuff doesn't bother me as much. I just want to see them focus on the gameplay. So if they're still using all those same assets, they don't have to put all their effort into recreating all those assets and getting that working. Then they can just focus on gameplay, map design, balance, netcode, that sort of thing, getting that working really well. So really excited, actually, the more I think about that, for this upcoming title, to see just a nice polished title, because we all remember Battlefield 3 didn't have the smoothest of launches.
I mean, when you think about the massive amount of patches and uploads and stuff like that they had to make to fix things along the way, and that was actually one of the questions that I did actually put to, I think it was to Lars, perhaps Lars Gustafsson. It was one of the things I don't think made it into my interview that I did with Carl Magnus, and I asked him about the patch sizes, and I said, what did you think about the patch sizes? Were they too big? Would you rather see kind of more progressive, smaller patches? And from him and one other guy who I can't name, they both said that they would prefer to have smaller patches along the way so that they could fix things on a kind of more recurrent basis and see how they went along and developed. So they said that was a possibility that it could happen with Battlefield 4, but at the same time there were reasons, I believe, for why they had that system in place with Battlefield 3. But just to bring up a point about what you were saying there as well, I totally agree. To me, what really makes a good game is the smoothness of it. So having smooth core gameplay, but also server stability, that is such a key element. It really is. It's so important to have that for both PC and console systems alike. If I often feel like it's the foundation element of a game, is having strong server and proper stability there. If you don't have that, you can have the best game in the world, but the fact that people can't play properly, they'll just bin it straight away, and that's something they really need to focus on, and companies need to start realizing this. There are several other titles that I have said I will not even go near until they sort that out now, because there's no point playing them if you can't have that. So to be honest, I didn't really give a damn personally about the setting, the weapons, all of this stuff. What I want is strong core gameplay and strong server stability, and when they have that, I believe that the players will make the game at that point.
And there's billions of small issues that they could work on, and there's also just frankly bugs that have been in the game since launch. This was something I did in a recent video where we were playing some squad deathmatch, and on PC, if the servers don't set the player limit to 16, they have the option to set it to whatever they want. But if they don't set it to 16, then the squads can be whatever size you want. So you can have a squad of 20 versus a squad of 3. And that's been broken since launch, so there's weird little bugs like that. But one thing that I would love to see addressed in the new Battlefield games is sort of I'll call it a free market of servers right now, where if you're playing a ranked game, those servers can have any options. You can put 64 players in a tiny map. You can put instant vehicle spawn on. You can restrict weird guns. You can set all these weird settings, which I think is fine to give players freedom. But the problem with that is that you get players that demand these high population servers, and sort of if you want to set up a server now, you have to be competitive, and you almost have to make a game that has bad game modes. Like if you want to play a conquest round on PC, it's very hard to find one that doesn't have instant vehicle spawns.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's like a few guys out there that have really tried to sort of prevail these, they call it true battlefield. There's like
Yes.
a series of true battlefield servers that are trying to make servers with the original game settings that are actually balanced.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's just like a big issue right now. Is like you want to play a balanced game, but because you can get more points in an instant vehicle spawn server or 64 players on
Yeah.
Metro, which is just horrible, by the way. You can. It's just a grenades fest, and you can rank up real fast, but it's not fun at all.
Yeah, yeah.
So sort of the free market is kind of ruining the servers right now, and I hope they kind of address that and let you customize your servers, but keep them from being ranked.
Yeah.
So that if you want to play ranked, it's all the vanilla settings.
I guess the counterpoint to that is, I mean, for example, my survey is pretty much what you're describing. I try to keep it true to Battlefield. I don't increase the player counts crazily. I try to pick maps that give the best kind of proper Battlefield gameplay for the console perspective anyway, so it's nice and balanced. Some maps not too large so that the gameplay plays out quite well. It's fairly regular. And so now I have a fairly good amount of people who regularly come to my server because they want that kind of gameplay. So it means that we all tend to have these really fantastic Battlefield games. Helps me as a YouTuber as well, because it means that I have proper interesting gameplay to talk about, rather than just like, oh look, we steamrolled this team, or yeah, we were at stalemate for like 40 minutes,
And that's good. That's good. And those servers do exist, and I try and play them as frequently as possible. But sometimes if it's, say, early morning and you're trying to find a good game, the only ones will be these sort of more popular but worse rules servers out there.
I think the counter thing though that DICE would probably say, I can hear them saying it right now, is that these servers are put there, people can put whatever systems or settings they want on it, and they will just say, well, the community will choose what settings they want. That's kind of what they would say as an argument, I would imagine.
Yeah, but that's the whole government concept.
Yeah.
It's like we elect smart people to make decisions for us. It's like, and I would like to elect the designers at DICE who've been making video games and playing the heck out of video games to sort of control some of these settings for us. I mean, they already do it to an extent.
That's controversial, Levelcap. What about your faith?
See,
what about your
like,
faith in community communication there? What about?
Well, no, I like that. I think, well, my compromise would be to just let us have the freedom, but in unranked servers. That way you get the people who really just want to sort of grind through ranks and just play whatever map ranks them up the fastest. We'll still have to play legitimately well-balanced maps, and those who want to try and experiment with some crazy game modes can do it in sort of their little unranked mayhem servers, and those will probably be a little less popular because of that, because I think right now they think it's like sort of the freedom to choose what they want, and it's really more the freedom to choose how to rank up the fastest.
I think a very easy way to do what you're saying would literally just have like a box to check in the server browser, where if you have a server which is running on like the set rules from the beginning, so you would have almost the kind of default settings, you can just check that your server is a default server in terms of rules and regs. You obviously get to pick whichever maps you want, but the system setup is default. When you go to search for servers, you just click that default option, and it lists all servers that are default like that, so that you're not going to have tons of crazy things.
They kind of do have those. They kind of have those options in Battlelog, but they don't really work.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just
if I check infantry only and search for a game, I'll join a game that has vehicles. It's just sort of like, what they're in there visually, but they don't really function right now.
But to let's bring it back to the whole experience of the event and so on and so on. And something else that we got to do was these breakout sessions, which I don't know if everyone sort of was aware of. And I made one video this week talking about the Frostbite 3 engine. And what I had done is used my iPhone to grab dictation from the guy who was speaking there. I asked if this was okay, and they said yes. So I did that for each of our breakout sessions, and then it allowed me to kind of go back through, analyze what the guy had said. So a lot of it was kind of properly dictated by a DICE developer, so it wasn't me just kind of going, I think they said this, blah blah blah. No, I actually got proper information from the guy, and it allowed me to make a constructive video from that. But I mean, what did you feel about those? Do you think that was like another element that we got to take away from? I think personally it would have helped them a lot if they had recorded those things themselves or done it in a different way and then posted them to the Battlefield YouTube for people to see. Because from watching those sessions, it really helped me identify with a lot of elements in the game. And I think that if they had provided those for the community, I think it would have allowed people to kind of identify themselves much more with the titles coming out. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think you did a really good job of trying to make your content much more informational than some of the other stuff out there. I feel like 90% of the people they invited to the event kind of provided the generic information that was presented there, sort of in the presentation. Like, we're going to focus on creativity and innovation and, the big three, like, bland concepts of development. And that was sort of like what their articles and stuff were about. But it would have been cool if they released more honed videos that were for the fans that really wanted to know the nitty-gritty details. I did enjoy talking to Crash 7800 on Twitter. I think that's his name. Ian Tornay. And he had some interesting insights to the game, and I talked about battle log issues and that sort of thing, and he said that they're working on a bunch of stuff for it. And I don't know how much of it was official, like it's hard that's why I didn't really talk about it too much, because it was kind of generalizations, so I can't be like, battle log's gonna get completely redesigned for the new Battlefield 4. Like, I don't know, we were just sort of talking, and they said, yeah, we plan on doing a bunch of stuff, but I've also heard that a lot from Dice and Battlefield 3, so I don't want to make a video claiming that stuff's gonna happen when it may or may not.
Well, one of the things that I thought was really interesting was when we were at the after party there, and I'd say this is something that definitely the guys who went to Stockholm got a lot more out of, and I do feel it's a bit of a shame, because I think you guys who went to the US one, I'm sure was a really awesome experience, but you really probably didn't get, like you say, to meet so many of the actual DICE developers, and that in itself was just a really fantastic thing. And I feel it is a shame, because I think a lot of you guys that went there would have been able to glean so much information and experience from talking to those guys. I think it's a bit of a shame. But from speaking to Lars Gustafsson, which was fantastic, like when he came in at the end and a lot of people had left, and I was just like, okay, this is my opportunity. Just went straight up to him. I was like, Lars, love the game, blah blah blah, and we just got into this half-hour discussion, which was really great. But yeah, one of the things that he said to me that I thought was really interesting was he said about how one of his ultimate fears is the whole deal of how much do you change the game, which is what we were talking about earlier. And he said his biggest fear is that when they put the game out there, there's going to be too many people saying you haven't changed enough, or you've changed too much, or you've so. And I have said this so many times, I think I've said it in this series, I've said it on my own channel, that for me, one of the biggest problems for developers when they produce sequels to a series ongoing like Battlefield is how much do they change in a new game that they put out. They can't change too much, because if they do that, it will be too different from the franchise, and that will piss people off. If they change too little, then people will go, oh, it's just Battlefield 3.5, and they almost can't win. And I think you could, from when it's
very difficult. It's like a fine line that they have to run, because you have to stay true to the core elements of the game, yet be innovative enough so that it doesn't become stale.
Absolutely.
That's like really hard to do.
And yeah, exactly. And this is what he was saying, was that he, you could see, I mean, he loves the game so badly. These guys have been working on it for like 15 years or more. And this was one of the things that he clearly thought about so much, was like, how much do we tweak this game? How do we change it? How do we make it so that people will, enjoy it as a new experience, but it's close enough to what they love so much about the game already? And it's a very, very difficult thing to do. And for me, I think that's another reason why when I came back and was doing my videos, this was something that I kept in mind. And I think a lot of people don't. I think they kind of, they have in their head what they want the game to be, and they forget about all these other things. And you really need to keep in mind what an unbelievably difficult task it is to have a game like this. And when you're trying to make something new, that concept of how much do you change it, it's so critical. And if you screw it up, the game could be dead in the water. And I think they almost carry that fear, like, so often when they're trying to decide what to put into the game.
Well, I have to say I'm not worried about the game, and I know you get concerned with comments and things that you hear on your channel and stuff, and we have this discussion a lot, and I often bring up the point that the loud minority is often,
Yep.
the biggest influence in these things. And so you get a lot of people that are like, man, it's Battlefield 3.0 or
Yeah.
3.5. And that's a very small percentage. I think this game's going to do well. I'm really looking forward to it. Legitimately,
Yeah.
honestly, I'm not. Dice EA has not paid me any money to like endorse Battlefield. I'm legitimately excited for the next iteration of this game. Most of the people I play with are legitimately excited. And so I imagine most of the community is. It's just we don't go hang out in forums all day and go, I'm really excited for this game and I have no new information on it. It's, people like to complain online. That's what the internet's for. It's
Mm.
like 90% complaint forum. So you almost got to like not listen to some of this stuff out there too much.
I guess one of the last things that I want to mention, just as a small thing, because I know it's been mentioned a lot sort of in the last week as well, was that a lot of different people got asked to go to these events. Not all were Battlefield players. And something that people have been speaking about this week is like they've kind of had the fear. They've all been going, oh no, EA Dice, they want to get COD players to come over to Battlefield. Now, I seem to remember that this exact same thing happened with Battlefield 3, and from the discussions I've seen this week, I kind of couldn't quite understand where people are coming from on this one, because everybody's going, oh no, they want COD people to come over here. And from my point of view, it's very, very simple. Number one, this is what people said with Battlefield 3, and it kind of didn't really happen. Like, we suddenly, we didn't see the whole game sort of fall apart. It was just kind of pretty much what it had always been. Yeah, sure, you'd have, the game has grown, so naturally you're going to maybe have a little bit more situations that aren't perfect for you, but overall, it's not been too bad. When people come over from COD, which they are entitled to do, for Christ's sake, if they want to play a different game, they can. When they come over, they're either going to like the game and go, wow, this is a really different experience. I'm going to get on board with the way that this game plays out. And then they're going to play it to the pace and style of the game. Or they're going to hate it and go, man, this game's so slow, and what the hell, these vehicles, blah, blah, blah. And they're just going to go back to whatever game they were playing before. But the other thing that's crazy is people are going to be like, oh no, there's so much trolling now, and there's people just playing for kills, blah, blah. Excuse me? What? This has like been happening through the entire period of Battlefield 3. People doing crazy trolling shit.
Dude,
Every
Battlefield
game you play,
1942 was the king of trolling. Do you remember how hard it was to take off an airplane in Battlefield 1942 without some jackass in a Jeep cutting across the runway and like just everything exploding? Like,
yeah, seriously, So this is, to me, it's like a non-issue. All these people going, oh no, EA are getting COD people to come over here. It's going to ruin Battlefield. Shut up. It's like, it's going to be no worse than it is. Like, I mean, for Christ's sake, I would...
Any Battlefielder that was truly into Battlefield through the development definitely played Modern Warfare and probably liked it a lot when it came out. I liked Modern Warfare. I put so many hours into that game.
Yeah.
Thought it was awesome. I prefer Battlefield in general, but I don't hate COD games. It's just like they're shooters. They're incredibly similar shooters.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, people are going to tire of one and maybe move over to the other.
Yeah.
And what's wrong with sharing markets? They forget that, DICE is also a company that needs to make a profit and gain audience, and they want to grow and appeal to larger demographics, and it's like you get these mindsets where it's like, no, let's make this game more niche, more and more niche until we've excluded everybody, and then the company has no more money and fails.
The thing is, as well, is people go on about money and they go on, well, that they made this much money and they did this much money. I know from my experience of going to this event and hearing from these breakout sessions and talking to the guys, the coders, the people that build the game, they actually said that they've taken on a much larger development team for Battlefield 4. So they have increased their team there. And the way that they've been able to do that is because Battlefield 3 has been such a success, and they've been able to make such a profitable game by the fact that it's really enjoyable and people have loved playing it. They've been able to grow their company, and then hopefully they're going to give us a much more enjoyable product. All these people going, well, we want to do this in the game, we want it to have that. How do you expect that's going to happen if they don't grow the game and grow the market? Let's not forget that the Bad Company series took a while to grow. Even Bad Company 2 wasn't massively successful, and it wasn't until Battlefield 3 and they introduced this quite massive leap in terms of game development that we really saw the whole brand grow. I mean, Bad Company 2, it was an awesome game for the people that played it, and I know that you would have loved it, I would have loved it, but Call of Duty at the time was still massive compared to Battlefield, and we really didn't see any kind of change to Battlefield 3, and I think people need to keep that in mind as well, really, when they're sort of talking about the way that things are going forward.
Yeah, yeah. And just to kind of wrap up that thought there, I really don't think, after everything I've seen and all the people I've talked to at Dice and just about the game and what's going on with the future of the development, I don't think they're selling out in any way.
No.
I think they're staying very true to the roots of Battlefield. There's going to be lots of vehicles, so don't worry, you know, and there's going to be people raging about getting blown up by attack helicopters every game. So it will be true to the original Battlefield. I have no fear in that.
Yeah, and if I can just say one last thing as well, is when we get into the alpha beta stage, I am absolutely adamant that people like Level, people like myself, people like X Factor, people like In The Works are going to break this game down to the nth degree and go through everything with a fine tooth comb. And at that point, we'll have some proper objective discussions. But at this early stage, I think it's fine to be very positive, talk about the game, be optimistic, because after all, don't we want this to be a really, really great, successful title? I think I do. I think Level does. I think you guys do as well. So that's for me today.
Yep, absolutely. The most passionate people are often the most critical people at the same time. I've definitely put out some videos through my channel history that was just calling out devs and pissed off about bugs and all these things, you know, rant videos that went on for 15, 20 minutes about mechanics of the game, but I still love it. It's still my favorite game. So on that note, I think we're going to wrap up this episode of On the Level. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments sections. Are you guys looking forward to BF4? Do you think it's too much of the same? Do you think it's too different? You know, let us hear what you guys think. So thanks for watching. This is Luetin and Levelcap signing off.